Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the webinar today. So glad to have everyone in here. I see we've already got a bunch of people in here. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Thierry Demiba. I'm joined today by Aaron Joseph from Deutsche Telekom. I cannot wait to dive in here. Aaron, how's your day going?
Excellent, Terry. Thanks everyone for joining in. Yeah, let's dive deep into it.
Let's dive in. So,
Yeah.
before we dive in, I just want to do a little intro, Aaron. You are the engineering and architecture lead at Deutsche Telekom's AI Competence Center,
Yeah.
and you spearhead the development and deployment of advanced generative AI solutions across many of the company's operations. You've also been instrumental in creating enterprise-grade agent computing platforms that power Deutsche Telekom's AI applications, including the award-winning service bot Frag Magenta. With a strong passion for generative AI and its potential to revolutionize computing, Aaron emphasizes importance on engineering design. Dedicated to building world-class digital products and systems, fostering top-tier teams, staunch advocate of the ethical deployment of technology. He champions the concept of the right to AI, and in addition to his work at Deutsche Telekom, he is active in the community. So make sure that you're checking out Aaron. Aaron, welcome very much to the Vector Space Talk today. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thanks, Terry, for the kind intro.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Life is good. I really can't complain. I see some hellos in the chat as well. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So, Aaron, before we start diving into Deutsche Telekom and Qdrant, I had a general question for you. I'm curious, if you were a founder today, would you be starting a company that was B2B, B2C, both, or neither?
I would start with B2C.
Okay. And why would you do that?
Because I see the potential of what the current state of generative AI can do is not yet fully shown to the world. So first of all, you have to show the value, even if there's a B2B company. Most of them are not able to see what can they provide to their customer.
Yeah.
Infinite possibilities exist today right in front of our eyes. It need not be even a company, right? So you can create that AI native experience for the end customer, which is most often one person. And
Yeah.
how can we delight that person and then work backwards to B2B or B2C or B2B2C?
Beautiful. And I think that that's a beautiful transition into talking about Deutsche Telekom's commitment to innovation and the role of AI at Deutsche Telekom. So you kind of talked about that working backwards process. So can you tell me a bit working backwards in terms of your AI journey? Where did it start at Deutsche Telekom and where is it today?
Yeah, sure. So it started in 2023 after the ChatGPT moment. The current management of Deutsche Telekom at that point in time, we saw it coming. And usually telcos are not seen as first movers into an emerging technology wave. But the leadership team, Jonathan especially, wanted to quickly form a small team, explore what is the potential it holds right after ChatGPT was released, and then started engaging with OpenAIs of the world at that point in time. And quickly we started a small team. It was a pizza team to look into what possibility does it hold, what does it mean for us.
Yeah.
And I was part of that team, and I was leading the engineering and architecture. There was a few people who were also there from product, from ops, from data science. It was a very small team. And that was a starting point.
Yeah.
And then it looked into where can we apply this technology? Forget about fancy POCs, right? So essentially looking into what problems does it solve. And so customer sales and service was clearly a huge potential area for deploying this because of the energy, because of the efficiencies it can bring in. The second is we have a huge B2C presence as well. And so how, depending on how the technology emerges, what can we do to democratize access to AI for our customers across Europe was also another leg in that vision.
Yeah.
So right now where we stand, and also for internal employee productivity, these were the three legs: customers on new experiences, internal efficiencies for employees.
Hmm.
Third is precisely customer sales and service. So today where we stand with Deutsche Telekom, we have products on all the three dimensions.
Yeah.
For internal employees, we have AST, which is the internal AI bot and a platform which provides access to employees for different rack-like use cases, taking actions, employee productivity. For customer-facing applications, we have what we built as a one-board platform, which was what how you started this conversation, which is deployed across Germany, and we are rolling out in Austria, Croatia, and all the countries that we operate in.
Yeah.
Plus, we have the customer experience stream where we launched Magenta AI through our app channel, through which we are democratizing access to AI. For example, we brought in Perplexity and gave it for free for our customers in Germany.
Yep.
And then we are bringing more experiences. So has been the start, and where we stand. Of course, there's a lot which happened in between, which we can talk about it. Yeah.
And so one thing you mentioned there was this idea of delivering value to your customers. So for example, you're partnering with Perplexity to give your customers that value. How did that idea come to your mind of, well, people are using these tools, we should create these partnerships to give more value to our customers?
Yeah, I think our leadership team, especially Jonathan, has been a strong proponent of what more value can we provide to our customers than, for example, the typical telco value, which is
Hmm.
connectivity, right? And
Yeah.
also, if we don't do it, who would, who else would? Yeah, that's also another angle because over a period of time, uh, you would imagine there would be again major players that would emerge and control the experiences. But
Hmm.
it's so if you start to partner right away, it's a mix of partnership, build, buy, through which we can ride the wave, and because Deutsche Telekom cannot or would not invest in building all its capabilities in house.
Yeah.
So that was the angle on democratizing access to AI on the emerging wave, and then it is also resulting in the new. There has been huge aspirations also from the highest level, including Tim, to launch the T phone, which is the first AI phone launch in Germany. This is also being planned in the coming months as well.
Yeah, and we love the fact that you are German. Quadrant is also German, and it's really
Yeah.
cool to see this innovation coming out of Germany, place known for innovation. One thing I want to just kind of touch on is you've mentioned this triangle where you kind of have your core AI engineers, you have the democratization of AI development, and then you also have empowering business teams.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you look at those three pieces interlinking? Do you think that you should start first with creating products for your core AI engineers and then disseminate from there? Or should you start with your business team and work backwards?
Yeah, I think it need to have a balanced view on both sides as well, which is we need to build the capabilities in-house, period. Especially for a company like Deutsche Telekom, if you're just consuming products from partners or external vendors, we will never build this capability. So first of all, we would need to build strong engineering skills or deployment skills, including data science, engineering, operations, inferencing internally,
Yeah.
preparing for where the world is headed. The
Hmm.
second is how to quickly derive value without which this will just merely act as a technical project without delivering value. So these are the two legs. And so we strategically chose which areas would help us build those capabilities in-house and which areas would still immediately provide value, for example, Magenta AI, Perplexity partnership, etc.
Hmm.
But the customer sales and service is a good vehicle where we should be focusing internally to build those capabilities. And there's a little bit of a background to it as well. When we started in 2023, there was no AI framework per se. The models were just spitting out gibberish at some point. It was more like alchemy, right? You
Yeah.
You throw in your data and see what comes out.
Uh-huh.
And this is the expectation. This is the definition of RAG at that point in time.
Yep.
And and at that point in time, there was this interesting, cool POCs coming up, and LangChain was one of the frameworks which started to show some of these demos.
Mm-hmm.
But when we picked up customer sales and service, there was no established playbooks, and also we needed to connect to our own data platforms as well, right?
Yep.
So it was clear, even if you bring a vendor, there was no vendor, there was no established playbooks, there was no framework.
Mm-hmm.
So the bold idea was, let's start it internally, and
Yeah.
this was a triggering point for, because we needed to build a PaaS platform. You cannot create a simple RAG application because we operate in 10 countries, and the idea is we need to deploy this technology for all the countries we operate in as a central PaaS platform, as with the technology evolves,
Mm-hmm.
so that the synergies are delivered across the unit and not individual units. So this resulted in focusing the PaaS platform for sales and service, which we had to build in-house for several reasons, because there was no playbook, and we started to bet on some crazy ideas which our group had, which is what we refer to as LMOS, the platform which is now open source. So which we call as the Heroku for building AI agents. So which allows individual countries or engineers to build agents quickly. We absorb the hard concerns,
Mm-hmm.
and we bring in the models, etc.
And for those of you that might not be familiar, this Heroku that he refers to is this idea of creating an easy process for you to take something that you have on your local machine or you've been developing and making it accessible to people on the internet so that it can actually be shared and used as a web application. And that's one of the trickiest parts of building these AI systems, is actually getting it on the internet so other people can use it and off of someone's development machine.
Excellent. Absolutely. So this has been the journey so far. So we have a very strong platform. In fact, we started deploying this towards the end of 2023 for
Mm-hmm.
Germany.
Mm-hmm.
We started with RAG use cases, but then we started to roll out for function calling, like
Yeah.
calling, billing, APIs, etc.
Mhm.
And then we started evolving it into complex use cases like your router issues, call into your network, etc. Plus rolling out across multiple countries. So in fact, we gave a talk around our production use cases on how we are deploying it across Europe last September, and OpenAI Swarm was released in November. So essentially, a
Yeah.
framework was released, and the month before we gave a production talk. So we believe this is one of the first agentic computing platforms at
Mhm.
scale to be deployed in Europe in an enterprise kind of use case.
Yeah, no. And shout out to Swarm. They actually use Quadrant as well. I want to talk about Wartzol. I'm not talking about Motorhead. But before I talk about that, can you please talk? You mentioned that you needed to build a PaaS and not just a RAG system. Can you
Yeah.
please elaborate on what the difference between those two are, and also why Deutsche Telekom needs this system specifically?
Sure. So it needs a little bit of a history. For example, in 2023, if you go back, most of the framework evolution was, let's ingest some data,
Mm-hmm.
let's ingest unstructured data, chunk it, apply embeddings, and then put it in a vector database, and then expose a search endpoint, and then use an LLM to rephrase the answer. This
Yep.
is
Classic.
essentially
Yeah.
classic thing. But it, let's talk about outcome what Deutsche Telekom was looking forward to. Yeah,
Okay.
essentially, we want to drive down the call deflect. The main point is, how do you measure the success of this platform or technology?
Yeah.
It should result in, first, a brilliant customer experience. They should not be waiting on a hotline for half an hour to get an answer,
Mm-hmm.
or even in a chat line, they should not be waiting for
Yeah.
getting proper answers.
Especially with your phone.
Exactly. So the call deflection plus customer experience, these are the two metrics. Now, RAG is fine, but of course, it might work, it might not work. You can pray to the LLM gods at that point, at that point in time. But if you want to get to this, you need resolution. right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot give an answer saying, yeah, go to this place and do this, or talk to the other person. This anybody can do. So essentially, if you want to drive deflection, it was clear we would need action invocation systems. Meaning
Application
it
system.
it need to invoke an action which changes the state of something. Hey,
Yeah.
fix my router, change my billing address. What's the best plan out there,
Hmm.
so that I can and purchase it for me? So we saw that this is what would be required in the future. But even in 2023, this was not there. So we started to bet on, all right, the LLM curve is gonna, the scaling law allowed us to think, of course, bet on the trajectory. This is going to get better. So
Yeah.
let's build the application compound systems
Hmm.
such that when it's ready, we should be able to use the compound actions it can take, the
Yeah.
orchestration that I talked about.
No,
So
that makes
this
sense.
so this was the difference between, and now we need to do it across 10 countries. And then these agents, this AI agents, need to respond to multiple modalities. For example, chat is one modality, but the main deflection zone is the call. So which means the same agent need to work for chat, voice, and potentially autonomous use cases in the future. If a ticket arrives, there should be a multi-agent orchestration which results. So
Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
do you how do you build something like that for 10 countries and manage it, and not just some POC, which resulted is in abandoning several frameworks. We built everything from scratch,
Mm,
which was a big bet that we did.
yeah. It happens.
Yeah, and it,
Awesome. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that that's a really nice intro into Wartzol. So Wartzol is a new open source project that was released by Deutsche Telekom, and it's actually a project that's designed for use in production, which we're going to keep coming back to here in this conversation, that there are solutions out there that might work for you when you're doing a POC or you're just messing around in dev. But when you start talking about this enterprise grade, powering 2 million plus conversations, dealing with all of the users that a company has, a company like Deutsche Telekom has, and also the internal users as well, you're going to need something that is able to work in prod. So can you talk a bit about Wartzol and the design choices that you made around scalability, user experience, integrations, things like that?
yeah, sure. So this is the newest release in the open source channel that we have. So and and the key is it is built by two engineers, Thomas Weigel and Max Aaron with Sam Heyman. Yeah. And these were our key data ingestion pipeline builders. They were the plumbers, which were going into this large, massive data sets from different countries and landed in the vector databases, which is a really hard problem considering the answer quality which is expected, right?
Yep.
So what happened was initially when we started, there were several frameworks, Llama Index, Haystack, there is this ingestion strategies and all, right? But we quickly realized if you want to scale this, for example, within Germany, you might have 9 data sources. You might be crawling the telecom Q&A websites.
Hmm.
You must have internal repositories where the customer care people keep their knowledge. So there are n number of data sources.
Yeah.
And now multiply that with 10 countries, and each of these modalities might be different. Chunking strategies might be different.
Yep.
So if you need to build massive data ingestion pipelines, which has multiple steps, you need something more robust than mere, ingestion pipelines that we
Yeah.
typically see.
Yeah.
And that has been the problem statement which resulted in what is referred to as Wartzol, which is again, this is the name came up, the people who came up with was Max Aaron and Thomas Weigel.
Hmm.
The, the term Wurzel, even I cannot pronounce it really well. In German means roots, which is
Ah,
brilliant. Yeah.
okay.
So the idea is like a tree. These are the roots which goes and penetrates your data layer,
Hmm.
because data layer is typically asymmetric. Yeah, you can have databases, you can have markdown files, you can have HTML, and then the root builds on this is Wartzol. You have something called as steps in Wartzol. So you can get the markdowns, you can do embedding step, you can do chunking steps, etc., along with failover, point in time recovery, etc. And the best part is I call it the greatest hits of all frameworks combined because it's a meta orchestrator, right? So
Cool.
it's a meta orchestrator. So for example, Llama Index might have a good particular module for doing something. Haystack might have, something, and Quadrant might have some really good use case in their library. But if you if you want to club together all these things
Yeah.
and do what is Docklink might have something really good for document parsing. So the idea of Wartzol is it kind of acts as a meta orchestrator where you can, for each step, you can bring in the best tool for that jobs and also reuse that step so that all these 10 countries need not worry about, which is the framework that I should use, etc. So it's all about self-service and democratization, which Wartzol is trying to do. So it's a really advanced, massive data set RAG pipeline tooling which these guys have built. It's just open sourced, and and they wanted clearly this term Wurzel, which
Yeah.
is in German. Yeah, which really
Okay.
means
Wartzol. I will have to
Wurzel.
try to change. Yeah, when I hear the name, I think of Motorhead, the band. But
Yeah, right.
now
Yeah,
it's kind of rewiring. I'm starting to think of that beautiful T.
right.
Okay, so now I think you keep leading me very nicely into my segues. Thank you very much, Aaron. You're making this,
Really.
yeah, light work. Why don't you please tell us a bit about the rationale behind choosing Quadrant as the vector database solution?
Yeah, this is good. So first of all, I personally had been a huge Rust fan much before all of this.
Trust and Rust.
Yeah, in Rust we trust. Yeah, I think you guys have that the, the slogan or something. So when we started, of course, the vector DBs was kind of something which we started to evaluate. So we were using another module, another vector DB in production in 2023 or something like that. And then we started to look into operational simplification. So some of the components from several other providers have multiple components to be maintained. There is a zookeeper, there's a Kafka, then there's a replicator. So it is an operationally not simple. And considering this is only one module, because we have to build a PaaS, rest of the thing. So operational simplicity is something that we were looking into.
Yeah.
And when we looked at Quadrant, it is the simplicity of operations was really, really there. It was just 3 nodes, and you could do replication. It does auto replication, and because of Rust, the container sizes were roughly around 60 GB, 60 MB or something like that,
Okay.
and and it was super nimble. Point number one. Point number two is the speed that we started to experience for the precisions that we chose. There was clearly the latency improvements that we could see as we started to ingest more documents. Right now, Wartzol right now handles around 8,000 documents per day for ingestion. So along with that curve, we started to observe noticeable latency improvements with also Quadrant.
Yeah.
The third thing was, yes, the simplicity can only come in from engineering. I mean, this is what we also focus heavily on. So if you look at the simplicity of the APIs, we would know, yeah, okay, these guys know what they're doing,
Yep.
And the UI is brilliant too. Of course, there's WASM, and since you guys know Rust,
Yeah.
the vector representation of Quadrant is really, really cool, and we all love it.
Nice. I mean, it's fun working at Quadrant because I think it's one of these things where vector databases have become such a critical part of the AI infrastructure, and
Yeah,
Quadrant as a product just speaks for itself. So I just need to show up and tell people about it, and they're happy. So thank you to
easy job.
yeah, exactly. Thank you to all the engineers at Qdrant who are working on the core product. Make my job pretty easy, right? I just have to show up and show it to people.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about specifically some of the key achievements that you had with Qdrant? So, for example, I know that you were managing over 2 million conversations, and I also know that you were able to reduce your agent development time. Do you mind just expounding on that?
Yeah, exactly. So a few numbers. So we are almost close to getting to 2.5 million conversations, and our acceptable answer rate is roughly hovering around 90%. And there is a risk levels we are able to keep it under or close to 5 to 6%. And more importantly, our realization, if this kind of non-deterministic systems, the way to measure these is how fast can you iterate and make it better. That's the only measure, because it's not going to work on day one. So what kind of components do we need to make it better quickly, the feedback loop, right? So there are two kinds of problems there. One is there are LLMs, then there is vector embeddings, and the search, which is for long tail, as we call it, for RAG.
Yeah.
But then there is also how quickly can you do actions, which is invoking APIs. So we brought down the time to develop. We built this platform to collapse the development time. Our first agent was built in a month. It took a month when we were building the platform.
Yeah.
And then we brought it down to 15 days with a few engineers. And then right now it's hovering around 2 days to build an agent and a set of use cases. And we just got into a point where we further raised the abstraction, where business people can create the agent and release it. And we just released in Austria the first set of agents that were built entirely by the business team, no engineer involved. They are able to write it's not even, we are not calling it prompts, we have a compiler. So prompting is not going to work. This is our view. So we needed a compiler. So they are able to define what they want to achieve, and then they were able to release it, and it's hovering around 93% acceptable answer rate. So thank you. So progressively raising the abstraction so that we don't need specialized. So that's the idea of good engineering as well, right? So how would we democratize and absorb the hard concerns so that people who know their domain can solve the problems better? What kind of tools can we provide to them? And this happened to also engineers as well, because people who know the data systems, their APIs, they are better poised to build these agents rather than building new teams and new stacks, etc. So this has been our journey, and especially where Qdrant comes in that journey is, for example, in the kind of retrieval systems that we were able to optimize for with filtering and also whitelisting and several metadata attachments that we were able to do several tweaks we could do to figure out what might be the optimal approach for one country, Germany, which now can be replicated across the countries that we operate, which collapsing the time to develop long tail agents.
Yeah, beautiful. Just quickly, I saw someone ask, how is Wartzol spelled? That's going to be Wurzel. We dropped the link in the chat, and we will, of course, drop a link in the description to the video. So it's Wurzel, and it's on the Telecom GitHub. We dropped the link in chat. We'll drop a link in the description to the video. But if you're looking for it right now, you just can't wait to get started. That's where you'll be able to find it. I want to kind of ask you a bit of an unrelated topic before we go back into the technical stuff. Aaron, what do you think is the difference between great and good products?
Great is measured only by one measure, as in love. It sounds a little cheesy, but there is no other way to describe it. I mean, so depending on the user of that product, for example, if it's an engineering product, I look at it, or an engineer looks at it and look at the simplicity. This is one hallmark, and I say I love the simplicity. Or if it's a customer, they look at it and they might want to share with similar people. That's a good measure. So if I'm an engineer, I look at something and I say, this is beautiful, then I might want to share it with someone I know, another engineer. So this is the only measure I would say for great. But good is, yeah, maybe I will share, this is good, this is good. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
actually really love that because, no pun intended, because Quadrant, we brand ourselves as the most loved vector database.
really.
It seems like great minds think alike.
Yeah, exactly. It counts a little CC,
Yeah.
but yeah, there is only one measure. I mean, tell them to stakeholders, which is love.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's a really
That's true.
powerful kind of, it kind of goes against the grain of, what you might see in a typical hacker news thread or the
Yeah,
SF ethos. It's like not a lot of people are like talking about the love metric, right? How
yeah,
about that as a KPI?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's time to revisit all KPIs. The agents will
Yes.
do all the work and summarize the love factor or love coefficient or something like
Listen, we're all just counting down until we're paper clips, right?
that. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, you mentioned earlier part of the reason why you created Wartzol, and also part of the reason why you had to create a custom solution for Deutsche Telekom was this complexity that can get introduced sometimes with all of the various frameworks. And you kind of want to be able to just pick and choose the best of each world, and also maybe not even the best of each world. Like a 4x4 isn't necessarily better than a sedan, but if I'm going on a road trip with my family, I know which vehicle I prefer, right? So
Yeah,
it'd be nice to have options there. So can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about why Quadrant was able to A, fit into that framework, and B, how you were able to navigate this world of diverse frameworks and effectively
Yeah,
integrating them?
yeah, sure. So essentially, if you look at the metric is how do you reduce deflection? How do you increase the deflection rate?
Hmm.
Second is the love factor, whether the experience is great for the customer, right?
Yeah.
And for that, you need information retrieval, presentation. The second is actions. And for that, you would need, for example, really advanced data pipelines, really good search databases. But then you would also need action invoking systems, which is like the PaaS platform, which we refer to as
Hmm.
LMOS, which is Language Models Operating System.
Yeah.
This has been the key where people go in and build these agents. This has been the main vector which allowed us to build agents quickly.
Hmm.
So when we started, there were no frameworks per se, and then we had to look into, hey, what is in fact an LLM application? LLM application mostly means you have to talk to a non-deterministic system over APIs. A
Hmm.
stream of tokens come back. You
Yeah.
have to make program decisions, right? So the second part is, who are the people who know their systems? Because we need to connect to the billing API, and who is building the billing API? They know their system better.
Yeah.
And in telecom, most of the transactional systems were on the JVM stack. And so we started betting on, just like you said, right? In Rust, we trust. We started betting on JVM stack, but because there was nothing back then, there was no Spring AI, there was no LangChain 4j was just emerging. But because most of our engineers already knew systems and the data systems on this, what can we do to empower them to build agents as against building a new stack, right?
Yeah.
Because so this was the result of what we refer to as two-pronged strategy. One is Elmos, which has been the platform where it's also completely open source. It's now incubated under the Eclipse Foundation, and it was born out of our frustration with the frameworks back then, because none of them were production ready, I would say, back then, and what we explored. And then we said, let's do radical simplification.
Hmm.
Let's take Kotlin as the key language, because it allowed us to build custom domain specific language, which we call as agent definition language, ADL, and which is what allowing our business people to write these agents right now. And it's that module is referred to as ARC, which is agents reactor, like the Jarvis arc. But this is what the overall trajectory was. We looked into existing frameworks. We had our own angst or dissatisfaction with a lot of these frameworks. Then we started to bet on the platform which we wanted to build, but
Yeah.
at the same time have the ability to plug in the best of what is emerging out there, Docklin, which is a Docklin or whatever frameworks out there, which is plugged into Wartzol. So there
Yeah.
are two elements, Wartzol and LMOS, both of them. One is the roots, the other is the agents, agent building platform, which is also open source completely.
Nice. And you brought me perfectly into what I was going to talk about next. So let's just jump right in. Eclipse Almos. This
Yeah,
is something that I think
yeah,
is not only unique, but also you're almost like living in the future. Though, as I say that, I'm realizing if we kind of look at what Deutsche Telekom's been doing, it almost is like you have a crystal ball because, yeah, you were doing this stuff before there were frameworks. Like, it's actually kind of crazy to think about that, right? Even just the startup within the company that you've built is quite impressive. But can you talk about how you think about data sovereignty, data privacy, vendor lock-in, enterprise
yeah,
preparedness, things like that with
sure.
products in terms of Eclipse Almos?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. This is a topic which has been super close to my heart. So essentially, in 2023, when we started, right? So there are multiple forces in play. One is, yes, we want to build customer sales and service bots to derive customer value. But as engineers or builders, we also we are like waiting for a moment where there's a radical change for us to build something and be participants in that, contributors to that future. And this was that moment. Yeah. So let's not build chatbots, but rather where is the curve headed and can we shape the next wave in computing? This was the thought process. And and at that point in time, so there were two things, right? What do we mean by how do we want to shape the computing? And which requires us to revisit some of the problems that I personally see in the way computing has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
So it completely moved from an open ecosystem, for example, the previous waves, right? Operating systems, Linux, etc. Internet was open. And then the next waves were cloud plus mobile computing, which is completely closed almost, kind of. So when I say we want to shape the next wave in computing, we want to also ensure that at least these elements are revisited, like an open computing ecosystem for what is the next wave in computing, which we saw as intelligence computing. And what are the programs that will be built on intelligence computing? It's called agents.
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do to build the necessary infrastructure such that it is sovereign by design? It can be taken and deployed at the sanctity of my home or my own data center or on the cloud.
Yeah.
Point number one.
Mm-hmm.
Point number two is if you want to build these agents, they need to interoperate with other agents so that there are no walled gardens. So an agent from Qudrant should work seamlessly with the agent from Deutsche Telekom without having to have a gatekeeper in between
Yep.
deciding how it should be. So this is what I mean by we wanted to shape the computing in these two regards as well, which laid the foundation for the platform that we were building, which is referred to as LMOS, Language Models Operating System, because we saw also language models as the new microprocessor. So let's build a new operating system and the PaaS platforms on top for a new wave in computing. So that was the starting point for LMOS.
Yeah. And you're bringing up so many things. I'm definitely going to have to invite you back, Aaron. But this ADL you brought up, that hit a nerve for me, especially the way that you were talking specifically about empowering engineers to build.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
one of the things that's changed in my life, I joined Quadrant. Wow, I believe actually today might be my 1 year anniversary.
Hey, congratulations.
I think it might
A
be today. Yeah.
special guest.
Yeah, no, exactly. Happy birthday to me. But over the past year, one of the things that I've seen change in my life is I've been able to increase the GDP of people in my life. Now,
Yeah, that's a
let
good
me
measure.
explain that a bit, right? Now
Yeah.
that I'm learning more about vector database and the advanced techniques that you can do with similarity search, I, for example, have a friend who works at the Department of Health for a government bureau. One
Yeah.
of the tasks that they have to do for work was to look at bills and then basically have an internal memo where they summarize the bill and how they feel about the bill.
Yeah.
The way that their state does the bills, some days there might be 77 bills that are posted, and this person has to literally look through each bill individually, write an analysis of it. I
Yeah.
created a program for them that uses Qdrant to just automatically do that. So
Mhm.
now they just have a website they can go to, and it saves them like 8+ hours a week. So,
Wow.
like,
Incredible.
these are the kind of things I can now
Exactly.
do for people who are in my life. And I
Yeah.
think this ADL is fascinating because
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that you need a Terry Demiba to get
Yeah.
that value. You should be
Exactly.
able to just go somewhere and build that in 30 seconds, save yourself 8 hours a week.
Exactly. So that's the fundamental value unlock that I see also with this technology. It can empower people to solve problems without being limited by the tooling which is available, and you
Yeah.
can build customized tooling, which is the most beautiful aspect of it because we all become enablers, those who can build. So as you move down the chain, yeah, for business, let
Yeah.
them. There has always been this problem, business, IT transition. So what tools can we build to provide the business to solve the problems that they want? What
And
tools can we build for the engineers to build great products?
that's what I was just about to say is right now, the flow is very one directional. So we have
Mm.
non-technical people using ChatGPT, using these front-end designers, using these AI coders, and
Yeah,
getting empowered.
yeah,
What I think is interesting is as this AI gets better,
yeah,
imagine an AI that teaches you how to be a better salesman.
yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just it can code and build up a front end for you, but now it can actually help you have a better
Yeah,
life.
absolutely. That's true empowerment, and that's exactly the reason why this time window is precious. Why? What can we do to enable this? Is going to happen. The technology curve is here, it's going to happen, but how do we stop walled gardens and then gatekeepers, and also allow this, improvement agent or whatever it is
Yeah.
to be made accessible for everyone without having a gatekeeper, with of
Yeah.
course with monetization models and things like that. And
Mhm.
that has been the key questions which our core LMOS team also asks, which results in these protocols like LMOS protocol, Internet of Agents, and a
Yeah.
lot of other things which is evolving under the Eclipse Almos team.
No, I mean, we love open source at Quadrant as well. We are, of course, fully open source. We love supporting open source. I think even outside of the data privacy and data sovereignty, the tech
Yeah,
community is, in my opinion, built on giving back, giving forward. I wouldn't be where I am today if some people hadn't basically wasted their time mentoring me when I didn't know what I was doing, so that now
exactly.
I can be in a place where I do know what I'm doing. So I love this idea of with open source, you're sharing with the community, making everything public, and helping each other grow instead of this kind of crabs in a bucket mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully aligned with that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so now we have about 15 minutes left. So I want to ask you a bit about the future that you see in AI, not only for Deutsche Telekom, not only for vector databases, but just in general. Do
Yeah.
you have any kind of thoughts on what you see happening in the AI space? And then, second, I would love if you can talk a bit about why you decided to go with Quadrant specifically one last time.
Okay, sure. On how I see AI evolve, there are multiple dimensions in there, but from a value proposition point of view, I think the future is something like deep research. Deep research from deep research, deep mind. If you look at deep research within ChatGPT or Perplexity, what does it do? It is not clubbing together some data. It's a reasoning model which can go deep into the context and then come up with intelligent answers, etc. It's not like a parrot.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is today the definition of what we refer to as agent or AI can do is give an answer. But no, how do we AI is going to get to this level 4 or level 5? Level 4 is where it produces new information. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
as against synthesizing existing information, but new information, which requires this kind of new RL models and building deep research kind of an agents.
Yeah.
The second point is, as humans, as a species as well, no one human is no human, right? Because we are social creatures, and the collective is what is going to determine building great things. So the multi-agent collaboration of such deep agents, reasoning agents plus worker agents, how do we bring together, just like humans as a species, they can coordinate with large numbers?
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring that fabric is where AI is going to head to, which results in large-scale collaborating agents, which can do tasks which no one could have predicted for now. And this is what keeps us awake. Let's just put it this way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right.
um, and then, do you mind just one more time reiterating why Qdrant was a choice for you?
Yeah, two things: simplicity in operations. Second is latency and the performance of Quadrant for the precisions that we chose, plus the simplicity of operations and the filtering capabilities, etc., which brings in advanced rack filtering and search capabilities.
Thank you, thank you. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I didn't get the chance to dig into, but I would love to talk about now is, so how do you think about organizing your resources or your team in
Mhm.
terms of optimization versus innovation? How do you find a balance there that makes sense so that you're not only optimizing the product, but you're also taking
Mhm.
those big swings, which are going to be hacks, and you're going to get those air balls, but also you're going to find those diamonds in the rough?
Yeah. So this is a really interesting question because this gets often asked also in the teams. So essentially, if there are all patterns figured out, let's take mobile app development.
Okay.
The patterns are known. How do you develop an app is known. Frameworks are there. The information is democratized. In
Hmm.
that case, innovation might be a little hard because all the innovations have accumulated in resulting in a stable way in which mobile applications can be developed.
Yeah.
But right now, with AI application development, we are just in the beginning. So if you just start to follow blogs and what somebody else writes, and oh, this framework is great and that framework is dead, then you're not meant. You would not be able to see what is coming. This is the time you need to really balance out innovation and put a lot of focus on it because there are no patterns and nobody is right. Nobody can claim that they are an expert on how to build these systems. So, which allows interesting possibilities. It's the greatest time to be alive as an engineer or data science or whomsoever. Yeah,
So exciting. I'm currently living with my brother,
yeah,
and literally every single day we'll just sit down and be like,
yeah,
there's a million different things we could be building right now with vector
yeah,
search. Which one do we
yeah.
pick? Like, and it's just
Exactly.
impossible to like try to
Yeah,
narrow. You know, you can do image stuff, you can do text stuff. Now we have video. We're
yeah,
working with 12 labs on a video recommendation powered by
yeah,
Qdrant. So
yeah,
I think that there's going to be just a ton of opportunities, and you're going to
yeah,
see a ton of companies that we're going to know in 100 years still be
yeah,
created in these paths. Even, for example, Robinhood, who just
yeah,
had their announcement yesterday, I don't know if you followed, just
yeah,
bringing AI and also this idea of democratizing access with AI, right? um,
yeah.
Starting to just show up
Exactly.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And then
exactly.
another thing I'd love to talk to you about is, when you think of evaluations, how do you decide what a useful framework is? So you mentioned that all
Yeah,
models are going to be bad at the start, and then you're going to
yeah,
have some kind of system to eval and then update. And
yeah.
when you're talking about evals, I'm just curious. I think I know the answer, but how do you feel about churn as an eval?
Yeah, so evals are the hardest thing. Essentially, earlier it used to be build. The complexity of building systems has gone away, and the complexity now lies in how to build evaluation or testing systems.
Hmm.
So the way to think about this is just like the system improving, you need to improve your eval systems, data sets, for example, so that
Yeah.
the next time. Yeah. So I think the key element is to build really great tight feedback loop integrations.
Mm-hmm.
What information can you plug out of the existing system and put it into the evolving eval systems? Because we haven't reached a place where eval systems can completely take over and then provide reliable eval metrics. So there's a lot of hand holding in terms of what faithfulness is, what success criteria is, what hallucination rate is, combined with human annotators. Now, what can be built is if you pick a narrow domain like customer sales and service for Germany in telecom, this problem is not the same as the eval which OpenAI might be looking, which is broader in nature,
Mm-hmm.
which which brings in interesting eval strategies that can be brought in. For example, when somebody asks a billing question, we can eval whether the right set of APIs were called,
Mm-hmm.
whether the response from the API was present in the answer which was provided to the customer,
Yeah.
and what is a broad range of questions for that intent that can come in. And this forms the eval data sets and the expected answer, which you can get progressively improve over time to run automated eval pipelines. That's the key. So it's all about building this iteration loop tightening. And if you take narrow domain use cases, it's much easier than looking at tooling as a problem, but strategy and tactics as a big lever to get you to where you want to reach with current loops.
Do you spend a lot of time reflecting on your
Yeah.
thoughts on this, or is this something that just kind of came to you naturally?
Yeah, for eval systems, yeah, I mean, it's we have been thinking about it for some time as well, of course, because this has been the fundamental insight. How does the time shifts from building, we brought it down to, let's say, 2 days or 1 day,
Mm-hmm.
but productionization or the further testing might take a few days potentially because human annotation, etc., might come in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And as the complexity increases, let's say there is multiple agents in the system, 10 or 15, and within an agent, the number of use cases it expands, the entropy is now getting bigger and bigger.
Mm,
So, the, so the greatest asset in engineering or even any strategy or any ingenious solution is constraints. So constraints allows us to think through what can work for this narrow system. The
yeah,
whole complexity is broken down smaller and smaller, which can work. And this has been a constant and simulations because NVIDIA shows us, and this is the reason why NVIDIA is a very much admired company. The idea that you can simulate your way into a perfect system. Yeah,
mhm. It's kind of crazy,
potentially.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
In
And the
theory,
deep minds are
it's
the,
a fixed game.
yeah. So essentially, I would see the future would also go into these kind of systems, into building better simulation systems, which helps in coming up and then auto-regressive tests, which it can do, and then it's like level 5 or autonomous driving. Yeah, you
Yep.
put these systems, and then the simulation system feedback, and then improve and improve, and that's how where it is
And
headed.
very similarly to level 5 driving, the technology is getting better, but we've set a standard that's so high
Yeah,
that reaching it is going to be very difficult. Because if someone had showed you these robo taxis that we currently have like 5 years ago,
yeah,
you said, no way.
no
But now
way.
the bar has become, well, can it pick you up at your front door and drop you off at the exit without, it's like we keep
Yeah,
raising the bar. One of the jokes I like to make is we already have AGI, it just has really low precision.
yeah, exactly. That's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah, my man
because when
borrow
are you
that.
going to decide, okay, we've hit AGI? It's like, tell me what precision you need. Because if
Yeah,
I make it and it's 1% less and you tell me it's not AGI, we're going to have a problem.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So now I'm just going to go to some questions. We have about 5 minutes left. So we've got Anand. Thank you for joining, Anand. A question for Arun. What are your thoughts on graph RAG and having multiple technologies, one for storing graph network and another for vector DB?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As in terms of RAG and also retrieval, one size fits all is not there. And essentially, you would need hybrid approaches for sure. And graph RAG is irrespective of the technology. Representation of the data as interconnected nodes is the clear way in which better retrieval systems can be built. One of the nodes can be a vector embedding node. But this is also what Klarna CEO mentioned. Our secret sauce has been graphs. And if you are able to model your entire company's data,
Hmm.
structured, unstructured, whatever, in n number of dimensions in a graph, yeah, then the AGI current version can be put on top. It can do whatever it wants. Yeah, for example,
Yeah,
that's so graph rag or graph representation of information and interconnection relationship modeling is the key to get us into then parroting systems to decision making systems. This is super important.
awesome. And we actually have a partnership with Neo4j for
Uh,
GraphRag, and I
yeah,
have a demo on the internet. So basically,
yeah,
the way Aaron described it, where you would be storing your nodes in Quadrant, but combining it with Neo4j to have the capabilities from both.
yeah.
And then another question that we have is, um, when implementing RAG in all these countries, does embedding model, chunking technique, etc., differ among these 10 countries?
Of course, because there's a problem with it's not a problem, it's the diversity which makes this interesting because it's each country has different language. Uh, because Germany, German, Austria, German, but it's a different German, and then Croatia is different, and Hungary. So definitely the embedding models start to slightly differ. But there are these general purpose embedding models which are coming up, which we are evaluating at some point. But for Germany, we have our custom embedding models, which allows us better retrieval for the terms and terminologies that we have,
Nice.
and also the chunking strategy. So
Yeah, the chunking strategy stuff is actually very interesting. I was just doing some experiments on a paper I read talking
mhm.
about basically there's chunking strategies where you would chunk on different frequencies.
Yeah,
And then when you
yeah,
retrieve, you look at the different frequencies of chunks and you see which one's best and you retrieve that one instead of just chunking the same
yeah,
way across the document.
yeah,
And I'm just experimenting performance there versus the
yeah.
time loss and compute. But it looks like it might be a promising solution. So it kind of shows how one thing you mentioned, which really excites me, and I think a lot of people are excited about, is like no one's an expert at this. At the
Yeah,
very most, you have 2, 3, 4 years of a head start. So
yeah,
if you have never coded before and you start doing this stuff now, okay, those people have 4 years ahead of you. Now, on the
mhm,
flip side, one thing I wanted to mention, actually, I'm kind of bummed we didn't get to spend more time with it, is I think Aaron is a great example of why AI is not going to take our jobs. This knowledge and kind of the like foundation that he's able to bring, which now he can build on top of that foundation because we have cool technology, we have cool cranes. But without that foundation, you're building something very rotten. And I think it's been super cool to talk to someone like you who has actually been able to see this technology and now sees, oh, wait, there's an angle here because I remember when we didn't have AI frameworks and now we
yeah,
do. So I like this is really exciting to me and it shows that having real domain expertise and also being able to think clearly, right? Because if you listen to Aaron talk, everything that he's saying makes sense in a holistic way. He's never saying something where you're like, wait, how does that tie in with that thing, right? Everything's connected in this very beautiful way. So shout out to you, Aaron, for joining us today. This was amazing. I would love to do it again. If anyone has any questions for Aaron or myself, Aaron, where can they get in touch with you?
great. Thanks a lot, Thierry. And I enjoyed the conversation as much. That was a reality check because that was the time I say I'm not the real Arun. I'm just the agent representation
Oh
of
no,
Arun, which is
oh no, you got me. You got
so it
me.
works. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thanks a lot, Thierry, and thanks a lot for all who joined. A lot of open source projects. The team. I mean, this has been a lot of work or weekends and things like that to
yeah,
contribute to the wave. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. No,
So do check out LMOS, Eclipse Almos. There is also a new project which is called OpenAI SDK. We started to build a responses API replica of the OpenAI API. It's also open source. There's quite a
Nice.
lot that you could check out.
Okay. We'll definitely drop links to everything that was mentioned. Obvious, I see you asking for the paper. I will not gatekeep the paper. I will share it. And then, Aaron, is there anything else we didn't talk about, we didn't touch on, you want to mention? People, I want to mention, everyone go check out Wartzol. We'll be dropping a link to that. But anything else you want to mention, Aaron?
Yeah. So Wartzol, Eclipse Almos, and also the key point is now's the time, if there are people listening, to shape this in household small ways. So before we jump into solutions, also pick vendors or companies or products and frameworks and tooling and technologies whom you align with in your values as well, because that is a way in which to create an ecosystem and not get tied too deep into, let's say, the kind of practices that we have seen emerge in the previous waves of computing. So people who have the decision-making power can choose these values, and also along with the cool technology before we jump into solutioning. So I would highly recommend to form that consortium to try that point. Yeah.
Carpe diem, you got to seize the day. And thank you so much for joining us, Aaron. And thank you for connecting the world using Qdrant. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it too. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy.
All right. Thanks. Bye.